Hello, listeners. Big breaking news today. So big, we have jumped back on to the podcast. Andy Murray has been brought in to coach Britain's number two, Jack Draper. He's back in coaching capacity in Jack Draper's coaching team for the grass court season. Of course, Andy Murray was previously with Novak Djokovic in a bit of a coaching stint. That lasted 6 months. A bit of a coincidence. That happened almost a year to the day that partnership ended. But Andy Murray is now back in the coaching squad with Jack Draper. Jamie Delgado, Jack Draper's current coach, they have called it quits after 6 months. So, Chris, a lot to unpack here, lots of different angles to take. But what was your immediate reaction to this story? I am very, very excited. I feel like this has been, I'm an Andy Murray fan, I'm a Jack Draper fan, I'm a British tennis fan. I feel like this is, I'm, for me, it's a dream come true, although I'm still a little bit cautious based on what happened with Murray and Djokovic.
Yeah, I think my first response was I need to see this on a verified publication. I think I saw it do the rounds online. I thought
You
surely
thought it was like
not.
April 1st.
I did, but then it's May 12th. So then I checked, is May 12th? Does that mean something somewhere? But you can never be sure when you see these sorts of news stories. But for a lot of people, it makes a lot of sense. I think they've wanted, when that partnership with Djokovic ended, they've thought, who's he going to coach next? Hopefully Jack Draper. I think I've thought maybe like an Iga Swiatek type, but I think the consensus was he would coach someone again. I think not because that partnership went so well, but because Murray likes to stay close to tennis. And I think a lot of people think he's got a lot to offer in a coaching capacity, even if Novak Djokovic wasn't necessarily the beneficiary of that. And that wasn't the most fruitful partnership. So I'm excited from the prospect of, it did add a lot of, now I'm actually less excited because what about the pressure? The pressure of Andy Murray for Jack Draper in his box. Maybe that's not a good one because I was thinking about his grass season
Mm.
last year. In fact, most of his grass seasons haven't been great. So do you think that that's going to be a benefit? Because this is now really up the ante. He's going to be the number one British focus at Wimbledon.
Yeah, there's big pressure, I think, with British tennis players playing at home. We've seen that. We've seen big players succumb to that. We see that with Emma Raducanu at Wimbledon, for example. But I think for Jack Draper, having someone like Murray on board, I think it's going to help him sort of manage that pressure and expectation from the British crowd. And as you said, Andy Murray's some of his best results. He's a double. He's a two-time Wimbledon champion. He's got great results on grass. It's a surface he's very much a natural to. And if you look at Jack Draper's results on grass, they haven't really been up to scratch. Particularly last season, he didn't have a great Wimbledon. And you look at his style of tennis, big serve, big forehand. You feel like it's a game that should be tailor made to the surface, but it's not. It wasn't necessarily quite clicking last season. So for me, that's a big, a big job to do for Andy Murray to get Jack Draper up to where he should be. On the grass courts, because I think like there's a little bit more he can do there on the surface.
Yeah, he's got so many weapons, but I guess the question is, will he even make it to the grass? I think that's what I'm sort of thinking here is that this is all a hypothetical. Jack Draper playing a tournament feels like quite a rare occurrence these days because of the very unfortunate sort of bone bruising injury that he has. He picked up something else on the clay. Murray's no stranger to an injury, so I'm sure there's a positive to that side of the partnership. But do we think this is something that we can get excited about from the perspective of it's very hard for Draper to get excited about tennis right now because of how little time he's actually able to spend on court?
I think this is going to be a boost for him. I think it's going to motivate him. I think we've seen in the past that they are they're friends and they get on. Jack Draper's spoken about Andy Murray as a mentor. You see the camaraderie they had previously, like in the Davis Cup. Think about that that drunken video they had in the back
Oh
of a
God,
car. I
the
think
500 miles clip, wasn't it?
yes, after
Well, one of
Manchester.
them was had a beer, but not sure the other one had.
So I think I think that I think there's going to be a natural chemistry there that I think means that they can hit the ground running. But I do think that for Andy Murray, it's an interesting one in the sense that, that partnership with Novak Djokovic did not necessarily go that well, didn't cover himself in complete glory. It did end amicably, but this is another high profile coaching appointment. And, he's also going to have his own motivations. I think he's going to feel like there's unfinished business here. But the stakes are arguably even higher, I think, than when he was with Novak Djokovic. I mean, with Novak Djokovic, I think he was just sort of learning the ropes, perhaps seeing what this coaching malarkey is all about. But with Jack Draper, I think there's a real need for him, to provide some value and get Draper back to where he should be. For the grass court season, he's probably going to be unseeded. He could face absolutely anyone when it comes to Wimbledon, and he's going to be looking for Murray for all that experience and expertise that he has to get him through.
It's a very different proposition when you look at it. I mean, when he was added to Djokovic's camp, I think Djokovic was looking for someone with a different opinion, someone he really respected, a bit of a wild card appointment. I don't think he necessarily thought he was going to take over the head coach role. Djokovic has a pretty sort of stable team that he adds to and maybe sometimes removes people from. And I feel like this one is actually quite a tricky one because you don't have to do much with Novak Djokovic. The problem was actually maybe motivation wise and making tennis enjoyable, giving a few more new ideas, maybe trying to learn some stuff about how Andy Murray trained as well. Maybe that could be brought in for Djokovic when it came to the fitness side of things. It didn't really land in the end, but with this one, it's actually Jack Draper actually hasn't achieved anything yet when it comes to what he would like to achieve, his big goals. Obviously, getting like top 5 is huge. There are some big things he's done. But I mean, what every tennis player wants to do is to win a Grand Slam. And I think Jack believes he can. And it's such a pivotal point of his career, especially when it comes to the injury. So it is a big ask. And I think I maybe, if I was Andy Murray, which I'm obviously not, might have gone a bit more down the Juan Carlos Ferrero route of, finding a really talented junior, maybe a junior from Scottish tennis or someone like that, and grow them into being a great player, whilst also spending the time at home, maybe much more in that sort of a way, because then you're able to kind of be at a point where maybe your family life as well as your professional life, you want it to pick up again, and then you could dedicate your time like Ferrero did with Alcaraz before obviously he got binned.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? I always felt like that would be more of a natural progression than kind of jumping back in the deep end. But it is just a trial, right, Joel? So maybe it is just to see how it might go.
I exactly. I think a lot of these things with coaching announcements, they're very. We don't know how. Well, we know this at the very least is going to last for the grass court season. And again, I think that makes sense from Murray's point of view. He's got a very well set up family. This is going to be at home. So I think that's also going to be comfortable. I don't see that maybe as a barrier or an issue. I think what is also interesting, Chris, is the fact that Draper has split with Jamie Delgado. Now, the quote from Draper, it was very amicable. He said, "I am very grateful for everything Jamie Delgado has done for me over these past 6 months. He is a world-class coach and a great man." But to me, the fact that, Delgado has gone, Andy Murray is coming in, I kind of see Andy Murray in a state where maybe he needs a little bit more of a support, or maybe being more of a kind of a mentor role in the camp alongside, a seasoned coach. Of course, he's going to have a lot of support elsewhere in the team, probably with the Lawn Tennis Association as well. But I feel like the fact that Delgado not being there, I think that's going to amp it up, I think, on what Andy Murray can bring to Jack Draper's game even more.
I mean, it's quite strange when you think about it. I'm having a new trial for the grass season, and I'm binning off a coach that I said is world class and that I think is great. It is quite strange because normally, as you say, with the Djokovic Murray appointment, you're adding someone to the mix there. And I think this obviously says that during the grass court season, head coach will be Andy Murray. And the only logic I have would be that if he doesn't know what he's going to be able to do from a physical perspective in the future, maybe he's also thinking about who is the best person right now to maybe get me a deep run at Wimbledon, given the fact I'm very limited in how much I can play. And maybe that's why he's really focusing on this grass court season swing to see he's beaten Djokovic this year. Maybe he can do something special, but he will need, the best in his corner because he might not have many opportunities given the injuries. Hopefully he will. Obviously, that sounds a bit negative, but it does feel like quite a dramatic shift, to tap in Sir Andy Murray for grass court season when you haven't even played that much of a clay season. It feels quite an extreme measure, to bring in, a knight, a two-time Wimbledon champion on a trial, Joel.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fascinating
Unprecedented,
hearing
right?
unprecedented. I think it's going to be fascinating hearing some of the dialogue that they're going to have on court, perhaps between the box and between the player. So yeah, it'd be very interesting. It'd be very interesting to see. I think. I mean, we're talking about the grass court season, and we'll have to see what that looks like for Draper. I think the plan is to see him at Queen's and Wimbledon.
Stuttgart, I
Maybe,
think, is on the agenda as
yeah.
well.
Okay, so maybe another like event in between. What do you think are going to be Andy Murray's priorities when it comes to Jack Draper's game and getting him back to where he was?
I think he will really help Draper with the physical side of things because I don't think Draper knows his body very well. I think he's always struggled with knowing if he's doing too much, if he's doing too little because he's so ambitious. It's giving kind of Holger Rune, but like, the UK version in that sense. And I think that
Mm.
Murray, I mean, he could write the book on discipline when it comes to rehabbing, when it comes to recovery, when it comes to taking time out, and then kind of setting realistic expectations for your career after that. I mean, a lot of people, I probably was in the camp that he probably should have said goodbye to the sport when he did have that kind of dreadful knee problem and then the hip problem and then the replacement. Just because it's so hard to put yourself through that. But he proved everyone wrong and had some fantastic matches and managed to extend his career. So I think that's where I think showing Draper what it's like that some days you can do more, some days you can't. And maybe that kind of perspective will be the most important thing, really as a mentor and inspiration. I think from a technical side of things, I think Draper's got to get more out of his serve, especially on grass. I think, Murray did mix it up on grass. I think some of those tactics will be vital because he hasn't ever looked at home on grass, really. Even in that Queen sort of run he had last year, he said he didn't think he was playing great tennis. So the grass court know-how and the physical and kind of the routining of the body, I think that's something where he can add the most value. But Joel, the big question I have for you, will it work? Will we see some great results from this partnership? Will it stick around? Maybe that's the bigger question. If Draper is able to stay fit, do you think this will go beyond Wimbledon? And do you think it's the right appointment for Draper at this stage of his career?
I think it was going to be inevitable at some point. The way that they talk about each other. I think from that point of view, it was inevitable, and I think there's a great chemistry already that can be tapped into. So from that point of view, I think yes,
People
great.
did say finally, didn't they, when it came out? And I was like, yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of is finally.
And I think this, to be honest, I think this is the best moment for it to happen. At home, we spoke about kind of Andy Murray, and he's got other things going on in his life. Being a full time coach on the tour, that is a hard gig, especially when you've got
Mm.
a loving family that you
A
you need to
shortbread
support.
deal, he's
Yeah.
got, yeah.
So I think maybe there was a little bit of perhaps a compromise, but I think for me, this is like this is the moment it has to happen because I can't see it happen in any other time of year. And, the nature of coaching on the tours, we hear so many trial appointments, test periods. It always seems to not be the done thing of like signing up someone for a 1 year contract, 2 year contract, like in, like football managers, for example. It's sort of something that, hey, let's see how it goes. And if it's a success, let's kind of see if we can continue working it. But
Mhm.
if it's not, no harm done, we can move on. And I think at the moment, Jack Draper coming back from another injury, I think, this is going to be a way to kind of help, I think, build that momentum. Um, so yeah, I think it can work. I'm a little bit wary just based on, I guess, you know, Murray and Djokovic, but I think it's a completely different dynamic. And I think Murray will have taken a lot from that experience. I think one of the things, I love about Andy Murray, I think he's a great listener. He always listens to lots of different opinions. The way he kind of obviously champions women's tennis, bringing in, Amelie Mauresmo, all these different opinions. And I think he would have learned a lot from the experience with Djokovic and brought that on board. So I don't necessarily think we're going to be in a rinse and repeat situation. And I think that's why I'm excited. I'm excited to see how Draper can grow and can evolve potentially with this friendship turned coaching partnership. But I'm excited to see how Andy Murray evolves. A great of our game. He's dabbled in coaching, didn't go quite well. But he's coming back and battling for more. It's sort of how his playing career's gone. He never took no for an answer. And I think
never say die.
This is a great kind of launch pad for him. So yeah, well, I think we'll have to see if it might continue beyond Wimbledon. But I think for now, let's just see how it goes. But I do think they have a lot to offer to each other.
And I think the motivation to do well with Andy Murray in your box for Jack will be huge. And you just hope that there are more times they can, spend on court together. I'm sticking to, I think Jack's only playing the grass season this year. And then I think he's going to take a step back until 2027. I think it might be connected with the length of period of time, the injury. The grass season is less taxing on the body. Maybe you don't play a full schedule. And then, you could train with him, maybe do the recovery properly. I don't know. That's my inkling. But I mean, I guess what we'll see is, can friendship lead to a fantastic coaching relationship?
That was the question I was going to end on, because as I've said this many times in this episode, like, they have a natural chemistry together. They are friends, and like, is that going to be? Do you think that is going to be a help or a hindrance to their coaching partnership?
I think the respect is huge there, and I think it's different sort of respect from Djokovic and Murray being almost growing up together. I think it's always going to be a bit more brotherly in that sense, but more kind of the same age. It feels like they're the class of together. Whereas with Draper, I think you can be friends with someone who is kind of your idol, but I always think that relationship is very much like not one-sided. Don't want to make it seem one-sided, but like the admiration is not shared necessarily in the same way. So I think it probably could be a case of don't work too closely with your heroes if it doesn't work out. But I don't think that it will put a strain on the friendship. I think if anything, it's a sign of how good the friendship is that Murray said yes to this, because he doesn't have to, and I think that's where it comes to a place of, I need some help. Murray's answered the call, and that's what friends do. So I'm hoping it's more in that vein rather than like, one last chance with my hero. It feels a bit Make-A-Wish.
You were my friend.
Yeah, I know. Imagine if he said no. Maybe he did say no a year ago. That also could have happened. He could have asked him before, because did get some scoop from Holger Rune that there are a few players that he knows of who were in talks with Andy Murray. So this might not be the first time it's come up, but we'll have to find out what Kim thinks next week on the podcast as well, won't we, Joel?
Yes, indeed. And listeners, do let us know as well. What do you think of the coaching partnership, Jack Draper, Andy Murray, for the grass court season? Will it continue after the grass court season? What can we expect from the partnership? I'm already envisaging now. I'm just hoping we're going to get some TV shots of Andy Murray just getting out of his chair in the player box and with a loud "come on."
Oh, it's going to be good, isn't it?
Hear it from the crowd. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great for the fans.
Fun for Wimbledon.
Love it. Certainly. I think it's going to bring it's going to bring an extra spotlight. Can you imagine also if the interviews at the end of Draper and Murray
asking what would be fantastic, and also if Draper does win, then Andy Murray has to do a press conference, Joel, and you might get to ask him another question at Wimbledon.
Yes. Oh, yes, of course. Well, let's see. We'll be back next week, of course, for our Rome Week 2 catch-up, where we'll be catching up on all the finals. We'll get Kim's view as well on Murray Draper, and maybe we'll have a few more views. If any new news
I'm sure
comes out,
we always have more views, Joel.
We always have more views. We'll have to see if there are any more developments. As I said, I'm interested to understand a little bit more about what just happened between Draper and Delgado, because I was not hearing any murmurings there.
You want the gossip, Joel.
Where did that end come from? I'll be interested to know maybe a little bit more about that. But we're going to end there. But as I said, listeners, do let us know, and we'll see you next week for another Talk Catch Up.